after hearing all this stuff all summer, how about this sucked, that sucked, everybody sucks, hitting coaches, doesn't know what he's doing, everybody sucks, everybody stinks, it's a disgrace, Let's review the Cardinals. Now that we've had time to just kind of let everything settle down, let's actually review what they did offensively in 2022. And this is why I have no reason to be concerned other than the usual, a little concerned about this, a little bit concerned about that. That's baseball. That's inevitable. But as time goes on, I evolved in my position because I've been doing research and just looking deeper into some of this stuff on the offense. And it's like I got away from this notion. It's like, oh, well, they better get they better get a guy for the outfield. Well, no, not based on who's available or who was available, because they weren't going to dish out $160 million for Brandon Nimmo, but he didn't want to leave the Mets anyway. I don't think they were going to wanted to take a chance on Michael Conforto's shoulder. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There just really wasn't all that much help in the outfield. So I'm okay with it because I think they got so much. They're going to have more outfielders they know what to do with in 2023. Okay, but let me get to the point. I apologize for that, for wandering a little bit. Here's what they did in 2022, and I'll go slow just so it's easier to process the numbers. All right, the Cardinals in 2022. They were tied for fifth in the majors with an average of 4.77 runs per game. So you got a top 5 offense in terms of runs per game. They were first in the National League, and they were second in the major leagues with an OPS plus of 114. Number 2 overall, tops in the National League. They had the 4th lowest strikeout rate in the majors. They were 4th overall for the most times reaching base. There's only 3 teams got on base more than the Cardinals. They were 5th in the fancy pants stat that is actually become much more in vogue, WRC plus, which is park and league adjusted runs created. They were 5th in the majors in that. They were 5th, number 5 in overall in on base percentage. They were 5th overall in OPS with runners in scoring position. They were 6th in overall in extra base hits. They were 6th overall in total bases. They were 7th overall in slugging percentage. And they were 10th overall in batting average. And all of this, despite the fact, and I checked this today, according to Baseball Reference, the Cardinals played, of course, half of their home games at Busch Stadium. And Busch Stadium, according to Baseball Reference for 2022, was the 7th worst venue for hitters in the major leagues. So tell me again why I'm supposed to trash their offense for what they did over 162 games. I mean, I know Jeff Albert had long hair. He was kind of obnoxious to look at and all that. But why am I supposed to be the dog that just runs around and lifts his hind leg on every tree and bush in the neighborhood over this offense? There's just no basis for it, unless you just completely disregard the regular season, and so you're going to base everything on 2 playoff games where they failed. They absolutely failed. Well, let me tell you something. So that means it's a good thing Pujols retired, and they ought to try to trade Goldschmidt and Arenado. Because if you're going to base everything on 2 postseason games and throw out 162 regular season games, well, then you should be going on a message board or going on Twitter and demanding that the Cardinals do what they can to make the best deal possible to get Arenado and Goldschmidt out of here. Because with those 2 guys and Pujols in the 2 games were 3 for 23 and struck out 7 times. They did not drive in a run. So if the only thing that matters is the postseason, well, Mo's got to get those guys out of there. He just got to get rid of them, right?
Well, Juan Yepes has got to play every day now.
Yeah.
Based on the playoff game, Bertie.
That's right. I mean, it's just you got to be reasonable about this. And I've said, do the Cardinals need a deeper lineup in general? You know, could they have used another bat? I'm talking about last season. Mm-hmm. Only because O'Neill was out of commission and Carlson was really banged up with his wrist and his thumb. I'm talking about at that point, could they have used another bat? Absolutely. Remember, and this is when, Gorman just fell apart, even though he'd returned, got an RBI in the first game. Yepes fell apart, was hurt. He came back, as Jim Hewer just noted. Hit a 2-run home run to give the Cardinals a pinch hit home run to give the Cardinals a 2-0 lead, and they should have won game one, but then they screwed it up. At that point in time, you had a deplorable situation at catcher offensively. So at that point in time, there were some big holes in their lineup. But you can't look at that moment in time, a 48-hour period, and some of the stuff that went wrong for them late in the season, and just flush the whole thing down the toilet. It doesn't work that way. And again, I'm being a smart aleck, but there is some. If we're going to if we're going to be so linear in our thoughts on this, well, it only matters this postseason. Okay, I wonder what we can get. I wonder what the Cardinals can get for Goldie and Arenado. They start making calls saying they're available. They were epic failures in that series. Oh, you like them though, huh? Pretty good little players, aren't they? Do you realize you can name, the top 50 baseball players of all time? Do you realize it's impossible to count? Well, I wouldn't want to put the time in it. You realize you can take Babe Ruth, you just name your own personal top 10 or whatever. You realize how many times, regular season, postseason, for 2 games, they do nothing. They're terrible. Go take a look at Ted Williams in the World Series in 1946. You can't you can't base your whole judgment of whether your offense going into the next season is a good offense. You can't get away from that and throw out all of the positives, and there were many that they had in 2022, just because your big three flamed out in a two-game test. What do you think would have happened in the first game, even the second game, if Goldschmidt, Arenado, and Pujols were on point and they were just smashing drives all over the place? What do you think would have happened? I got a pretty good idea what would have happened, but it didn't happen, did it? 2004 Cardinals with that incredible lineup, after that first game in Boston, did nothing. Does that mean they all sucked? Does that mean they were weak-minded or something? Or, well, when they play a good team, they can't hit. Well, they beat a pretty damn good pitching staff to get to the World Series, if I recall. A couple Hall of Famers in that rotation. Well, should be in the Hall of Fame. So I just think people need to rewind this and just be a little more rational about it. Because you got all those categories. You're first, you're fourth, you're fifth, you're sixth. You're in the top 10 in all the categories that matter in the regular season. And on top of that, you didn't have a one-dimensional offense either. And you don't have a one-dimensional offense going into 2023. The Cardinals were 7th in the majors. Bill James has his base running grading system, if you will. And Bill James, to me, is a genius, and I take everything he says and attach importance to it. I trust his work. You talk about a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame. Anyway, the Cardinals were the 7th best team in the majors last year. They were a plus 70 on the bases, net base running gain of plus 70. And they were tied for 10th with 95 stolen bases, and they finished 6th overall with a success rate of 79% on steals. Last season, Cardinals position players ranked number 3 in the majors Only the Dodgers and Yankees had more non-pitcher wins above replacement than the Cardinals in 2022. But they crashed in a 2-game showdown. And they crashed primarily because the manager, who was really good as a rookie manager, but he screwed up terribly in Game 1 by letting, metaphorically speaking, Ryan Helsley die on the mound. The Cardinals blew that game. See, postseason games, a lot of them are low scoring. A lot of it, because you are facing the best pitching. I mean, look at how the Astros, what they did to the Yankees, for example, in the games that just settled it all. And yeah, your pitching staff, even if it's great, is going to get blown up. It's going to, and even in the playoffs, it's going to just have a really bad day or two. But at the front end, if you have a 2-0 lead and you got 3 outs to go and you can't hold it, and it blows up and you're like, what the hell just happened there? La Russa said that's the toughest thing for a team to get over. He says it just tears your guts out. And people like to say, well, hey, we'll go get them tomorrow. But he said, man, it just messes you up. It just totally demoralizes your team. It really just, it gets in your head and it stays there. So if they win that game, I think they win the series. They lost the game, which was going to be a well-pitched game from the Philadelphia side anyway. Sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other side. I know that we're not allowed to do that, right? But we got to go, Jeff Albert. Don't give any credit to the Philadelphia's top 2 starters, for example. You can't do that. But anyway, the top 2 starters that helped pitch them into the World Series. You got to win some low-scoring games as well. And if you get 2 home runs, a 2-run homer from Juan Yepez, which was the kind of moment that should have rocked the Phillies, and it did, except Ollie let him back in the game because Helsley couldn't locate the strike zone, and he faced 7 batters, and he ran out of gas, and he was freaking out, and it was an absolute disaster, right? So I just refuse to, join the wolf pack and just going nuts with criticism, as frustrating as it was with those 2 games. Now, if you're going to tell me, I agree with you, by the way, that this has been a long-running problem and they've got to build a better team to have a deeper, stronger lineup from top to bottom, I would agree with that. But what happened last fall, I don't think was in play along those lines, only because what do? It's not like you can make a trade in September when O'Neill gets hurt again and Carlson's got sprained thumb and a wrist injury and some other things going on. Goldie ran out of gas in the final month. You can't at that point make 3 trades. Trade deadline's over. So you have to take a team that was less than complete offensively into the postseason. And you still could have won the series, and you probably would have won the series had you put those final 3 outs in your pocket and celebrated in the clubhouse and put the Phillies in a really bad position. Instead, you emboldened them and you gave them confidence, and they became a monster after that. So, I don't know. I just feel it's important to remind everyone, for perspective purposes and for fairness purposes, just how damn good this offense was last season until they had some physical breakdowns late. And it's why I think it can be a really good offense again, because I think some of the younger guys are going to get better. I'm thinking Carlson at least have health on his side this year. I'm more optimistic about O'Neill staying healthy. And Jim, I'm not saying he will for sure, but I have a better feeling about it because he's finally done something about the things. How many times, Jim, did you sit there and listen to me squawk and take cheap shots and, Mr. Universe, and all this other stuff?
Muscles.
It's like, oh, yeah, Muscles picks up a cup of coffee. It's like, oh, his neck. Oh, it's his neck. He's going to be out for 30 days. I sort of beat that meme to death, right? And I said, why? And you heard me say this. I said, why in the world has an O'Neill or the Cardinals. Well, I know why, because the Cardinals are so bad at this stuff. That's why. Medical stuff.
Yes.
But why, even Scott Boras, why have they not said, son, you can't hit for all this power if you're not on the field and you can't play. You got to improve your flexibility. You got to get looser. You're too taut. You move the wrong way and the hamstring goes. This is madness. So they finally, after years, and this goes all the way back to his minor league days, they finally addressed this issue. So that's why I have a better feeling about it, although I offer no predictions. So anyway, I think it is interesting that the Cardinals have become a bat-first team rather than a pitching-first team. Because you know why? The irony about Jeff Albert going away, and I'm not going to be sarcastic. I'm trying to be sincere with this and just kind of level-headed. But the interesting thing about it, every concept that not just Jeff Albert, but all the other Jeff Alberts that were batting coaches, all the concepts that they believe in and they install, the Cardinals were very successful at. Fourth lowest strikeout percentage. Got on base more times than all but 3 teams. Hit for power. Top 5 in extra base hits. You know what I'm saying, Jim? It's like since when the hell are those bad things?
No,
it's just the situational hitting. I gave the stat about where they were in OPS, top 5 or 6 with runners in scoring position. What? I'm sorry. Seriously, that's not good enough, and that was somehow because their approach or their concepts were messed up and crazy and all. Well, what the hell is crazy about having a top 5 offense and one of the lowest strikeout percentage of any team in baseball, and you're getting on base more than all but 3 teams? What? Could someone tell me what's nuts about that? I'd be curious.
The strikeout rate was what, I shouldn't say surprises me, but I'm most impressed with, because in this day and age, I mean, we all know it's the strikeout. It's okay as long as we're hitting home runs. They weren't awful. I think they would have been obviously better had their 2 outfielders that were hurt all the time had been there and gave them some production. I do have a text here. It says, 1, Happy New Year, Bernie. Love the show, and I appreciate the move the Cardinals made to get Contreras, but I'm concerned that they didn't do enough to replace Pujols' production.
I think Dane Perry made a great point. Who would you have found exactly? If we're talking about, Albert Pujols didn't do anything for April, May, June, first week of July. He didn't do anything. He was even thinking about, I might have to retire. Then once he made an adjustment or 2, and he went on a rampage. He was absolutely fantastic. He was incredible. It started right before the All-Star break, about a week before that, and then continued. But in the second half of the season, he hit 18 home runs. He had a higher slugging percentage than Aaron Judge. He drove in, I think, 50 runs. So, and I'm not. By the way, I really mean this. So please believe me. Trust me on this. I'm not saying this to be flippant or disrespectful. So when you have a guy like this, who this was just like a blue moon event, who were you going to find that you can plug in and at least for half the season, you're going to get one of the great performances in the history of baseball for like half a season? Like who was out there this winter that was going to give you, once he started hitting 18 home runs and a .715 slugging percentage over his final 60-some games? Like, who exactly was that person this winter you were going to get and plug in? You see what I'm saying? Because really the demand that they do that and they didn't do it, so therefore they're a failure. If you think about that, unrealistic. It's really unrealistic to think that you can do that. It's kind of arrogant. So tell me the name. Again, go to the text message line. I think I'm being very respectful. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But tell me who was out there this winter that could have replicated what Pujols did last year. Now, if you want to say, well, I wanted them to sign one of these shortstops. Hey, so did I. I don't think they were going to do what Pujols did, though. And Correa, we don't even know if what his status is. And I think around Major League Baseball, people thought you heard Dane Perry talking about it. The Dansby Swanson things. The general view is probably not going to work out the way the Cubs think it is. But if you want to tell me Trey Turner's great, who else am I missing here on that list?
Well, we had Correa, we had Swanson, I'm missing one too, Trey Turner, and there's one other one I'm missing, but Cardinals are never involved in any of those, even though the rumors will say, we will be interested in, the Cardinals just don't get involved with that. So
in other words, so what are you going to do? So you're going to, you got all kinds of bats, you got all kinds of talent, you got young talent. You got a kid that stepped up at home plate in a scoreless game one of a short playoff round where every game is extra critical, and he rocks a 2-run homer as a pinch hitter. He had a .450 slugging percentage during the season. Nolan Gorman drove in a run, and Nolan Gorman was above average last season, and there ain't as much left-handed power as there's been in a long, long time in baseball. I don't know why the left-handed power hitters are becoming somewhat extinct, but they are. So what he has is actually a precious commodity in terms of supply and demand. And people thought he was going to be Lou Gehrig in his first year or something. No one should be down on him. He has things to prove, but they all do. Goldie and Arenado have to prove that they can be close to being just as good as they were last year, right? Bart's got stuff to prove. But I'm just saying, there is no plug-in-and-play replacement for the second half that Albert Pujols gave the Cardinals. They could have signed Aaron Judge, I guess, but
yeah, they're not in that order. They're not in that price range.
Yeah, who's the guy? Well, he wouldn't have come here anyway. Yeah. Who's the guy?
It was Xander Bogaerts. Reminded me.
Oh, that's right.
With the guy we forgot.
Yeah.
Also off the text line, Bernie, would you be interested in acquiring Brian Reynolds from the Pirates? Would he be an upgrade over the two guys we're talking about?
Well, it depends on what the price is, because from what I understand, the Pirates are asking for a lot. I don't think they want to trade him in the division anyway. The other thing, I'm sorry to be this guy, but he is a horrendous center fielder. Horrendous. So if O'Neill is healthy and pumping and hitting like he did 2 years ago, and Carlson, he's got that wrist problem solved, which he will, and the thumb problem solved, which he will. You're going to move him aside? I like Brian Reynolds. I just think the Brian Reynolds mania has kind of gotten a little out of hand.
The defensive thing that you just mentioned, I think, probably gets overlooked because everybody just assumes. We just assume. Just assume he's good. But he's got 27 home runs. Well, okay.
Would he have that many home runs playing half his games at Busch?
That's a good question. Probably not. I'm all for giving Carlson a fair look this year before making a judgment, just because of the hands injuries. Those things, and we're finding out as the season went along that this thing lingered for a long time. It wasn't just something that popped up and said, we're going to have him looked at. They've known this for a while.
Yeah.
And I suspected.
So why hate on him?
Yeah, I would like to see him get a fair shot with a possibly 100% healthy season and see where he goes and where he improves. Now,
well, can I give you some info?
Sure, yeah.
He got off to a cold start in April, and I'm not excluding that because I just mentioned it. So he got off to a cold start in April. You know what he did when he was healthy and once he sort of got into the sync of things? You know what he did May, June, and July, and we're talking about basically 250 plate appearances. He hit 273. He got on base about 35% of the time, which is very good. He slugged 460. He had an 805 OPS. And in terms of, runs created, adjusted for park and league, 30% above average, the league average, 30% above the league average offensively. And then comes the wrist. Then comes the thumb on top of the wrist. And all of a sudden, he sucks. They better get something for him what they needed to get for him was competent medical attention is what they needed to do. Right?
Absolutely they did.
You go to 30% above the league average over a 3-month period, and you clearly are damaged physically. I'm thinking the hands are pretty important for a hitter. Silly me. And then you can't hit all of a sudden. And one of the reasons because the bozos don't understand how to take care of the problem. I mean, yeah, let's give up on Dylan Carlson. That would be smart. It's just ludicrous because we saw what he did the second half of last season. And we saw what he did in the first half of this season. And what that is a hell of a ball player. I don't care who the hitter is. You mess up his wrist and you tear a ligament in his thumb, you tell me how good he's going to be.
I think there's real upside there. And I'll add this to the outfield puzzle. I think, and you've given the numbers and we've discussed this, but I think it gets overlooked still is the power that came from Lars Nootbaar. I think gets overlooked because he didn't come up as the can't-miss power guy as a prospect. It's always been Gorman, who deservedly so. You see it, and it's there. But the numbers were very eerily similar in home run rate to Gorman and Nootbaar over the course of their at-bats. And I think that he needs more value there in terms of his hard hit rate, his slugging percentage for Lars Nootbaar. He should get a chance to play every day.
And how about the fact that he actually had a higher walk rate than strikeout rate? I'm thinking, let's just say second half after the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm. Much better.
It actually was before the All-Star break. How many guys do that? How many guys? I'm estimating here because I don't have it in front of me, but I typed this and talked about it so many times. How many people do you see that hit for power? They're great defensively. They can run like hell. He's got one of the best arms in the outfield. And he strikes out like 14% of the time, maybe 15% of the time, which in today's standards makes you Rod Carew. And he walks like 16% of the time. How many people do that? I was reading something Katie Wu wrote, and I really enjoy her work, and I like reading the comments because I want to see where people's heads are.
Right.
And at The Athletic, generally speaking, not disappointing though, not as good as I had hoped. I thought it was going to be really intelligent all the time, as far as the comments section. So, some guys in there, because she mentioned Nootbaar and what he did this, did that. Also, his StatCast stats are unbelievable. And this guy's like, I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't understand what the fuss is all about.
Okay. Okay.
Also, this dude's energy, right?
Yeah.
You would think in old school St. Louis, they'd love a guy who is just so fierce and so just filled with energy, and he's knocking people over, and he's running into walls. I mean, he plays hard every single second, But you got people. Well, I don't get it with you people with Nootbaar. I don't like him. I'm sorry.
His OPS plus was 126.
Yeah, and that's when and they didn't even give him that. He wasn't good early in the season, but he also didn't play much early in the season.
Right.
and he went back to the minors. But once they settled him in, and they let him be, he was pretty special. Now let me do this real quick, and it really isn't going to take any time. And I know we got to get to a break, but it's Friday, it's loose. What the heck, right?
That's right.
That's but we'll be at Friendly Sports Bar and Grill coming up Wednesday, and we'd love to see you there. So it's at Bayless and 55. Don't forget, if the Blues score 5 goals in a game at Friendly Sports Bar and Grill, they will give you a round on the house. 5 goals or more, a round on the house from Friendlies. And if they get a shutout, I was hoping they were going to do that last night, but gave up a goal to the Blackhawks. That's all right. But a shutout, too. If you get a shutout, the Blues get a shutout, then another round on the house. Hopefully there'll be some games where both things occur, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Here's 1 second, man. I apologize.
While you're looking that up, I'll just say this. There should have been a round on the house last night. They should have put up 5 goals on that team. That team is terrible. Blackhawks are just awful. But that's another subject.
So from July 11th to the end of the season, we're talking about 260 plate appearances. He had a .374 on base percentage. He had a slugging percentage of .514. OPS just under 900. His walk rate and strikeout rate were virtually identical, which you don't see, and they're both really low. Well, the walk rate's really high, but the strikeout rate's low. He had 13 doubles, 3 triples, 12 homers, scored 44 runs. He played great defense. That's a hell of a player right there. And he made adjustments, and I don't think that there was anything fluky about it. Because you remember there was a time where he was struggling even after he had done a lot of good things. Mm-hmm. Remember, they were working him over there for a little while. He made adjustments, and he finished with a big-time kick. I'm not as skeptical about him. I do agree he's got to prove it over time. But I'm not as skeptical about him as a lot of people are because, my goodness, that dude hits the ball hard, and he also has got great plate discipline. Again, isn't that what you want? I mean,
should get an opportunity. I agree with that.
Or you want to go out and sign a journeyman, kind of run of the mill, decent, solid, respectable outfielder to take at bats away from him? Really? I don't.
Well, and if you did that when Jordan Walker's ready, and everybody pretty much tells you he's going to be ready at some point this coming year, then you put him in a spot where there's not a place to play for him because we know this organization, once you get a contract, you're not getting released. You're going to play through the contract before we move on. They don't throw guys like that out on the street.
I totally agree.
So, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You got Walker on the way, and he's going to be up here, and they still think very highly of Alec Burleson, and all the independent scouts feel the same way. But again, we live in a hopelessly short attention span culture. So if a guy comes up from Memphis, where he's having a really terrific year, and he has 48 plate appearances and he doesn't do much, it's like, okay, he's a fraud. No. He's a rookie who just jumped into the major leagues and had 40-some at-bats. You don't draw conclusions off of that. So that's a guy who's got a chance to be something, and he could figure prominently in the DH thing if Gorman's playing second base, right? Here, real quick, let me do this because I wanted to close one thing out here. I apologize because we're talking about Brian Reynolds, the wonder of it all, right?
Yes.
So Brian Reynolds last year, there are 125 major league outfielders that played enough innings to sort of make the leaderboard or the leader list or whatever. Guys who played a lot. So there's 125 outfielders on the outs above average list, right? Of the 125 outfielders, he ranked 119th, -7 outs above average. So nothing else really needs to be said, does it? He's 119th out of 125 in the defensive rankings.
Ooh.
Runs prevented. Let me see if he was even worse with that. Runs prevented. He was, same thing, 119th out of 125.
It's not something you want to hang your hat on and go, we're going to circle around that guy.
People are just, but they see the 27 home runs for a bad team where there's no pressure. But he just can't play defense. And I'm sorry, you cannot weaken your defense. Your pitching isn't that good, and you don't have strikeout pitchers. You got to have a strong defense behind your pitchers. If you don't, I mean, the cause and effect is just so obvious. Like I shouldn't have to explain that by now, because when the Cardinals have made some defensive compromises, it gets ugly. Like Corey Dickerson in left field last year, right?
Not good. You're right.
So, and then one more thing, and then I promise we'll take a break. And I apologize for dragging this out, but I kind of enjoy talking about this stuff. And I really enjoy the text messages, so thank you very much. All right, Brian Reynolds, hold on, almost there. Brian Reynolds, this is Fielding Bible stuff. Let me see where he was last year. He was... It's the wrong Brian. Brian Reynolds. Why am I saying Anderson? I'm sorry. That was a Cardinals catcher.
Yes, I remember him well. He was going to be some kind of difference maker in this organization at one point too, and yeah, that didn't happen. Once you got here, you're like, no.
So Reynolds played. He barely stepped in left field last year. He wasn't there. He hasn't played much left field at all, and in right field. He hasn't played in right field since 2019. So people say, well, you move him to a corner, Bernie. Well, I wouldn't. If O'Neill's healthy, he's won 2 Gold Gloves in a row. Carlson's been really good in center, better than people thought. And they're going to be just fine in right field with Nootbaar in center. And you got the big kid on the way as well. So Reynolds has not played right field since 2019. He played 10 innings in left field last year and was about average. But for 10 innings, it doesn't matter. In center field last year, he played over 1,000 innings. And he was a minus 14. He cost his team 14 runs. He was ranked. You know where he ranked among center fielders in baseball last year in defensive runs saved?
Ooh.
He ranked 35th.
Okay. Not good enough.
How about his arm? Below average, according to the ratings, right?
And they want the King's ransom to acquire him. And he's got those shortcomings.
He was average at playing shallow or balls hit shallow, medium. He was slightly above average, but deep balls got over his head all the time. He was a minus 7. That's awful. I mean, I'm sorry. Again, I like the guy with a bat in his hands, but I think center field defense matters more than left field or right field. And I just don't really see what the point would be to do considerable harm to your defense.
Not unless you have a group of strikeout pitchers that are going out there every night, and they don't have it.
And a reminder, people just don't want to accept it. The Cardinals had a top 5 offense in Major League Baseball last year. And that's with O'Neill and Carlson banged up. And that's with Gorman having the usual rookie, the thing we thought that would happen at least some point where he just gets lost. They were the 5th best offense in baseball with Juan Yepes getting hurt and being out of commission for a long time after being great for them in May and part of June, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had the number 5 offense in baseball, even though the offense out of the catching position was an embarrassment to the franchise. They were still the number 5 offense in baseball. So I don't see the crisis. I'm sorry. If they're going to make a trade, all due respect to Brian Reynolds, who I like with the bat in his hands, you save the Fabergé eggs for a number 1 or strong number 2 starter. That's where you ship the Fabergé eggs, the prospects. Not for another outfielder, but for what is your greatest need? What is the thing the Cardinals need the most?
Number one starter.
Do you know where the Cardinals were last year in terms of wins above replacement for starting rotations? And that even includes Jose Quintana, who ain't here anymore. The Cardinals were 19th in the majors in terms of effective starting pitching, 19th. They have all these soft tossers except for maybe Mets. I'm talking about starters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are going to make a major investment in a trade and give away some of your best guys, it's got to be to strengthen the top of your rotation. That's just my opinion. That's more of a pressing, to me, that's much more of an urgent need than it is like, oh, we got to go get Brian Reynolds. I mean, what would be the counter argument to that? I don't think there is any. Is there?
No, if you want to win in the playoffs, I think we all know what the answer needs to be. You need better pitching.
Right. Quick timeout. And thanks for listening to me because it's so good. It's a Friday and it doesn't matter. You can just talk and be at ease. I like that. And again, I love the text messages, so thank you very much. Even if we disagree, it doesn't matter. I like being challenged, and I like, the Brian Reynolds question was a good one because I know it's on a lot of people's minds. So it gave me a chance to address it, which I really hadn't done. So I appreciate that. Even if maybe you didn't like the answer, but I hope I wasn't disrespectful. I wasn't trying to be.